Hello and welcome to the Demographicast, a podcast where we discuss politics and social issues with a variety of different guests. Today I'm joined by Jack Street and Alex Yeo. Alex is a master's student studying Russian, East European and Eurasian, or doing Russian, East European and Eurasian studies. He wrote an article recently on our website called Humiliation and Human Rights in Chechnya, which we will be discussing in this episode. How are you guys doing?
Not doing too bad, to be honest.
Yeah, good.
Doing all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Pretty good. We're recording a bit later today, so if the lighting suddenly drops, then that'll be why. So for the first topic, for a bit, I'm going to give a very, very quick summary of the topic because I don't really know much about it. So this is all I know. Chechnya is a republic inside the Russian Federation that borders the country of Georgia. It's home to about 1.4 million people. Until I read Alex's article, my only knowledge really of the republic was that the LGBT community was being oppressed there and that gay people were being persecuted and killed. But even then I was unaware of the extent. I'd encourage anybody to go and read Alex's article, but Alex, would you mind giving us a bit of a summary of what is happening in Chechnya?
Oh, blimey. Where to
Nice and easy first question for you.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, very nice, easy question. Where to even begin? So I guess the best place to start is kind of geographically. So obviously, as Britt said there, it is a republic in Russia. Specifically, it's in the North Caucasus region. And the North Caucasus it's literally it's north of Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. It's Russia's border with those countries there.
The Caucasus are like a mountain range, right?
Yes, giant, tallest mountains in Europe. I do perfectly. Some people might see some maps, people calling it like a part of Asia. I do think the Caucasus are more geographically part of Europe, especially the North Caucasus, where it's within European Russia.
Yeah,
but it's in that neck of the woods, next to the Black Sea, next to the Caspian Sea, and it is there. So Chechnya is one of six, again, arguably seven republics of Russia in the North Caucasus. I say arguably because there's one which is not in the region, but it's still kind of in the federal district, but it's still kind of in the region. The other six, which are or the other five, which are definitely part of the North Caucasus, are going from west to east: Adygea, Kabardino-Balkaria, Karachay-Cherkessia, North Ossetia, Alania, and Ingushetia, and then Dagestan. So of these ones, Chechnya is one of the northeastern Caucasian republics, which are Ingushetia, Dagestan and Chechnya. And of these, Ingushetia and Chechnya are very culturally similar. They are like the Vainakh republics, which is like a general term for that language family.
Right.
So that's where it is geographically speaking. That's the stuff we can. That's not for dispute. It's all. That's basically that's up there.
If you're confused, just Google it.
Google it, yeah. That's always a good idea.
It's important to cover the region, though, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't know about Russia. It's certainly not something I was particularly aware of before going to university, was how many different cultures and regions there are within Russia itself, and how much that impacts the governance of Russia.
Yeah, I was unaware as well, but I suppose because of how big it is, it probably makes sense.
Yeah. So but actually also the kind of a thing to kind of explain with the whole republics of Russia. So just for anyone who is not aware, so Russia is obviously massive. Russia's huge, and as a result, it's also unsurprisingly incredibly diverse. More diverse than I think sometimes people do give it credit for.
Yeah, definitely.
In some ways, in a lot of ways, ethnically, it's linguistically extremely diverse. The republics are regions of Russia in which in most cases they are more or less they have a big ethnic group. Either the majority of the republic is non-Russian, or a large significant part of it is non-Russian, The only exception to that is to that rule is Dagestan, where there is no one ethnic group. It is it's kind of the exception to the of the Circassian republics, Kabardino-Balkaria and Karachay-Cherkessia, but it's much more so in Dagestan, where there are 14, I think, 12 or 14 off the top of my head, recognized minorities, so ones which are only found in that region in Russia. But in reality, 41 actual ethnic groups.
Jeez.
So, yeah, very diverse place, especially in the North Caucasus. You get extreme divisions in linguistics, and just that's a thing for the whole Caucasus. To be honest, it's very old. It's a very old region. It's very There is an image. If you have heard of the Caucasus, one image you might think of, if you have a familiarity with the history, is there's castles nestled in the mountains, amazing little watchtowers. Georgia tends to pop up a lot in history of the Caucasus because it was for a long time the most powerful, most prominent culturally. But then Chechnya stands alone in really as to what it is. There's no in the modern world or modern setting of the Caucasus. There isn't really a place like Chechnya, apart from arguably Azerbaijan. In some ways, Azerbaijan, but not in other ways. There are a few similarities, like the current president is the son of a former president.
Yeah. So if
it's a dictatorship,
when we're looking at how the history of how the area is governed and what that's meant for some of the abuses that you wrote about in your article, how has that come about? What is the relationship between the sort of Chechen authorities and the Kremlin? Could you maybe explain a bit about the political history?
Yeah. So again, as I said, there are only some similarities between Chechnya and Azerbaijan. Everything ends with how the history was. So this is going way. We're going to go back a little bit for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by a little bit, I mean 1917, arguably.
Right,
so
okay.
the Russian Revolution kicks off, and a lot of the history of the Russian Revolution, especially in as I remember it being taught over here in the UK, focuses literally on Russia, on the actual Russian people, the Russian people, and it's almost it's kind of taken for granted that by the Russian people it just means ethnic Russians.
Yeah.
So
and it just sort of occurred in sort of 3 cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Occurred in 3 cities. There was a civil war, and that was it.
Yeah.
What is left out usually, in some books still, you kind of get it up. In some history books I remember reading, it kind of popped up as a afterthought, oh yeah, by the way, this happened with the various ethnicities of what was in the Russian Empire, which is the largest state on Earth for a while. Basically just broke away and tried to form their own states. So you have Ukraine trying to form its own state, you have the Caucasus republics breaking off, you have other things, other places breaking off, and in the middle of this, for the first time, the North Caucasus, or first time since their conquest in the 1860s, the North Caucasus tried to break off and form their own state, and they tried to form a unified state called the the Mountainous Republic of the North Caucasus. Which just I think is a rolls off the tongue. Really good, really good name there. It was basically a federation of the republics up to Circassia. So from North Ossetia all the way to Dagestan, it was trying to make a federation. Didn't really control all the territory, but there was an image of government. Maybe not an actual government, because it was impossible with what they had, I think, to have an actual functioning government. But that's basically that's where it started off as. Then the next big thing one thing to understand with Chechen history and the history of North Caucasus is that they, for a long time, they really didn't like Russia, and they still kind of don't. It's a big thing in their history how Chechnya has been deprived of freedom, and freedom is tradition and customs of the North Caucasus. Freedom is like pops up if you've ever read some of the Nart sagas, which are the mythology of the Circassians. You'll see that this idea of freedom and like this heroic Highlander pops up quite a bit.
Right.
So that's a big thing. So they resisted Russian rule, and of course that eventually became Soviet rule. And in 1944, I think it was almost the entire Chechen nation, along with almost the entire English nation, were deported to Kazakhstan. It was effectively a genocide. But some people will claim it's not because they didn't kill all of them, or that they were deported anyway. Right. So it definitely was a genocide. I think it is worthy of classifying as such.
Yeah.
Because if you were taking an entire people and saying you can't live here anymore, it's this is Russian now. It pretty much is. So it happened.
Sounds like a genocide to me. Yeah.
One of Stalin's finest hours. That was.
Right.
So afterwards they were resettled back in Chechnya, but again, that stood in the mindset. And because of that, I'd say that's one of the main reasons. But there are some others, but that's one of the main reasons that when the Soviet Union started to fall apart and collapse, the Chechens were the only republic or autonomous republic, as the Soviets called them, within Russia to break away. As opposed to obviously there's the 15 states of the former Soviet Union now. Those were all literally just they are. What it doesn't they were the republics of the Soviet Union. Russia was one of them. Chechnya was the only one to try and properly break away in the 90s, and it absolutely, along with Nagorno-Karabakh, I would say, and Georgia, the Caucasus was the height of the violence of the Soviet collapse. There was a lot of fighting there, and in the South Caucasus especially, a lot of it is still unresolved to this day. So there is still, and most of it was ethnic ethnic conflict. So the one that's in the news at the moment, as we record this, is the fact that Azerbaijan and Armenia have gone to war again over Nagorno-Karabakh, and the other ones you probably may have heard of these is Abkhazia and South Ossetia, the two unrecognised republics in Georgia, which claim to be their own things, which other people claim they are as parts of, although they are officially part of Georgia, which again I think they probably are. That's my own opinion. Other people can obviously do have their own opinions about it, but I'm of the belief that they are just part of Georgia. And then there's also people who claim that their base is being run as if they are republics of Russia, like they are just. So it's all complex there.
Yeah, of course.
In your article, you talk about the Kadyrovs. Have they been?
Yeah.
Have they been in power since the 90s?
So this is going to be the fun part of the podcast called Alexio attempts to explain the Chechen wars in as little words as possible. So
we'll buckle in.
Yeah, we'll buckle in. So the Chechen wars were a series of conflicts. Technically two, I'd say there probably are one, more or less. There was a sort of peace, but there never was, which broke out during the 90s in Chechnya. So what's happened was, as I said, Chechnya tried to break away from, and for a bit it was a de facto independent state. It was led by a former Soviet, I think he was a general, Jokhar Jadayev. And he proclaimed himself, he was proclaimed the first president of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Ichkeria being, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it is a kind of like another name for Chechnya, but it's more steeped in, again, heroism, myth, tradition. Like, there's a greater meaning to it.
Yeah.
Now, while the rest of Russia rest of the Soviet Union was fine, Russia viewed the rest of the Soviet Union breaking off as fine, an actual Republic of Russia breaking off was something they could not allow.
Right.
They couldn't allow. So eventually Yeltsin struck back, and that was the first Chechen war, which they thought was going to be a steamroll. This happened in, I think it was 1994 was when it started. So they had they had 3 to 4 years of independence. During which point, Jogayev basically turned Chechnya into accidentally turned Chechnya into a black market hub for like weapons. Tried to make his own, or again, they tried to make his own government. Whether it worked or not, it was definitely not a democratic-ish republic. It was this kind of a state which existed trying to form itself, unrecognised by no one, or not recognised by anyone except the Taliban. So take that as you will. So, yeah, you always know you're on something good when they turn up and they're saying, yeah, you're good guys. So, Boris Yeltsin ordered an invasion of Chechnya, and his amazing plan was to have 3 lines of tanks move in from 3 different directions. And it was a bloodbath and a disaster, and a lot of people died. And at the end of it, Chechnya came out more or less victorious, de facto victorious, but they had, or in theory victorious. They retained their independence, but at a horrifying cost. Like Grozny, that's when they get the photos of the old capital Grozny, where it's just destroyed. It's nothing there. There was a lot of just shelling. So that was the end of the First Chechen War, and then we get into I can't remember the scholarly phase for it, but it's like the interwar years more or less between the First and Second Chechen War. So from 1994 to 1999, that's when Chechnya really started going down a dark path, because it never really recovered from the war. So in this time, there's a few events of a note. In this time, a guy called Ahmad Kadyrov is elected to as Mufti of the Republic, so more or less the highest secular or Islamic authority in the Republic. So elected to that position, and Dzhokhar Dudayev more or less he supports him, and he gets him elected to the position. Dudayev is then shortly assassinated. I think it was a missile that killed him.
A missile?
I think the Russians launched a missile at him or something like that. It happened to one of them. It's either him or it happened to Basayev, who we'll get to shortly. Then, because, as I said, the Taliban were the ones who recognised them, and for those who haven't figured it out yet, Chechnya is a majority Islamic republic.
Are all of those regions in...
Most of them.
Dagestan is, right?
Dagestan is, yeah. So Dagestan is... Most of them are Muslim. You do have some weird situations, like in North Ossetia, I think there is a small portion of the population trying to revive the old Ossetian religion. Right, okay. So, almost like paganism, or their version of paganism, which...
This is how diverse these areas are.
Yeah. And even then, like I said, Kalmykia, which is the arguably seventh republic in the North Caucasus, it's not in the region, but it's near there. Kalmykia is Europe's only majority Buddhist region, so you have that there as well.
Crikey. So the support from you explained the support from the Taliban. Is it the same strain of?
Yeah. So there is also accusations, which again I can't believe that. Saudi Arabia came in, and basically Wahhabis. So one of the more extreme forms of Islam. So in Chechnya, Islam is usually practiced as Sufism. That's traditionally the practice there. So more mysticism, more localized belief rather than big, central almost sects such as mainstream Sunni and 12 Shia sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Wahhabism is a part of Salafism, which seeks a return to the time of the Prophet, and Wahhabism leans very into the holy war aspect of jihad rather than just having jihad as it's almost like the theory of just war we have in Christian theology. Yeah, that's how I interpret jihad in actual mainstream Islam. Wahhabism leans very much into the holy war aspect of it. So Wahhabis come, and a lot of young Chechens during the war find it very appealing, before and after the war even as well. So after Dzhokhar Dudayev, a guy called Aslan Nasratov takes over, and he is, in my opinion, the last chance of peace. He actually negotiates with Yeltsin a lot. Yeltsin and him come close to reaching some agreements, But there's also a growing threat of radicalized Chechens who are following who are fully buying stuff like Wahhabism and falling into
What year is this exactly?
This is between 1994 and 1999.
Right. This is
then
the peace
Putin
period. Okay.
comes into power.
Mm-hmm.
He's more or less handed the presidency by Yeltsin, and he wants to restore peace to the North Caucasus, specifically Chechnya, and he launches a massive war from 1999 to the early 2000s, and that's really when that's when things fall apart. So the Republic dies more or less. Asadov is killed. I think I can't remember when. It might be actually afterwards. But anyway, so then you have the problem of the insurgency. So another one you may have heard of, the Beslan school massacre happens in 2003, which was orchestrated by a guy called Shamil Basayev. He took a school a school hostage and demanded that they release people that they want to, or release hostages on the Chechen side, or give some money to the Chechen side. And the Spetsnaz try to free the hostages, and it all goes horribly wrong, and 300 people die because they used the wrong sort of. I think it's like they used the wrong type of gas.
Jeez.
The early history of the early history of like where the Chechnya comes from is. It's to me. It's not like the ones I know off by heart, like what happens beat by beat by beat. So yeah, Beslan happens. That's the most notorious example of what was terrorism and insurgency in Chechnya. Well, Beslan was in North Ossetia, but it's still the same. It was still part of the Chechen insurgency.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then Kadyrov, the guy who was the Mufti, comes to power, and he switches sides from being part of the independence movement to siding with the Russians.
Right. How did that go down?
Well, he was assassinated in 2004 at the end of it.
Okay.
So, he was attending a parade, and a bomb went off. It killed him, several officials, and several onlookers.
Right.
And Putin basically immediately took his son Ramzan Kadyrov under his wing.
Yeah.
And in 2007, Ramzan was appointed to the position of presidency. Appointed in literal sense, and ordained as the president. And since then, that's when we get to the part which I am more interested in, is when it switches to Kadyrov's more or less personal rule of Chechnya.
Yeah.
It's him. Yeah, that is a part that is covered in my article, more or less, with that. So that's the build up to it. It's a lot of background to it. But
thank you though. Your knowledge is unreal, mate. It really is. It's,
thanks, mate.
It's so interesting to hear you
thanks, man.
talk about it. So, to sort of bring us up to date a little bit more with what's occurring at the moment, I think one of the things that, and obviously it's difficult to keep up to date with everything that's going on in the world, but what has gone on in this region has been, from my point of view, something that's been not reported on as much as it maybe should be. I don't think when you talk about the things that you wrote in your article, there's not many people that would really know, not through any fault of their own, but know or follow what's going on. So why do you think is? What do you think?
Yeah, well, the main reason why people might not be able to keep up with it is that there aren't really many sources of the English language reporting it as consistently. So one I've used a lot in research that is an English language source is the Caucasian Knot, or Kavkazuzel, which it's amazing news resource for the whole Caucasus region. Right. And it's the only one which consistently, and by that I mean daily, puts out news for Chechnya and what's going on there. So even from things like religious events or small, even what we would consider more local news. But it's the only one that actually puts that out in English. Or I say it's not the only one, but it's the most reliable one in my opinion.
Sure.
So that's where I got a lot of the information for the article from using it in my own research, and just checking again to find some more articles to, just base my own one around the information on. So that's the main reason. If you go onto the BBC, on the BBC News app, and look at have one of the topics as Chechnya. I think the last time it was updated was the 9th of September, which was the one. Again, that was a news piece that inspired my. The nasty bits, the ones I put out on when I shared a content warning for. And first.
So where are they based?
Oh, Kafka I think is a Russian website.
Right, and they're reporting fully on what's.
They report on a lot. Yeah, they report on.
Right.
I think it's Russian. Let me just check. I can't remember off the top of my head. Kafka's. Who is it?
But they're reporting on what is going on in Chechnya, are they?
Yeah. So they report on Chechnya. They report on every single North Caucasian republic and some of the Krais, which are different sort of administrative.
Is there a slant to that reporting? Is it critical, or obviously I could tell in your voice maybe, Brett.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So it's more like it's kind of like the BBC. I think it actually is partnered with the BBC.
Oh, really?
In some fashion. I can't remember how exactly, but there is a sort of partnership there. I can't really say because obviously it covers everything, even down from like the North Caucasian republics, the North Caucasian smaller regions, as well as the South Caucasus and the breakaway regions in there. So it really covers a lot in what it does. There's a lot of authors working to it.
Yeah.
In most of the articles I found for my research, there is a bit of criticism there, but I think, to be honest, it's kind of to be expected, especially from that region. Independent news in Russia is a hard thing to come across.
Yes.
In some cases. The Caucasian is best for that region. The Moscow Times is also more independent. If you want, and that's also English language. That's also good to use.
Right.
And if you want independent news, stay away from Russia Today, Sputnik, TASS, all that sort of stuff. They tend to very much be obviously in favour of Putin.
Yeah.
Do you think, in a way, this is why the sort of these horrible things that you mentioned in your article that are happening in Chechnya aren't being, or nobody's being held accountable for it because it's not being
I think
reported
so.
on?
To be honest, yes and no. So the reason why nothing's being done about what's going on with Kadyrov is because there is no one in Russia who can challenge him. As I said at the end of the article, there is a growing opinion that Putin has lost control of Kadyrov, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm very much of that opinion that he's starting to lose.
So to put into perspective from what you said in your article, Ramzan Kadyrov is so that they're persecuting the LGBT community there. In fact, they even stated that there is no one in Chechnya who is of that community.
Which is
that
just such an
exist.
insane thing to say. I mean,
it is. Yeah, it's very strange how they get away with it. Like how fully they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Because obviously in Russia, LGBT situation isn't too good. Like there is a community there. There is a great community, especially in Moscow. There is a good community there.
Very much underground though.
Very much facing a lot of state persecution. So in Russia, if you've heard of Russia stuff like dealing with LGBT rights, the big ones are how it's illegal to tell children that gay people exist. It's illegal. There's a lot of stuff basically. It's all but criminalisation of it. So, but to be honest, even then, it's kind of better than the Soviet Union where it was criminalised. It was a criminal thing. It was if I remember correctly, it fell under the broad category of anti-Soviet behaviour or anti-socialist behaviour, which I think as a category also included stuff like paedophilia. So in a lot of ways, very similar to old recordings of like LGBT activities in the UK, for example, where popular thought even into the 90s was still to classify all LGBT stuff as evil,
unnatural, all the classic homophobic slights. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So that's it's no. Homophobia is no stranger in Russia, but in Chechnya it is much worse because Kadyrov tries to appeal to the more conservative Islamic part of Chechen society. Except, again, I personally think there is a disconnect. Like, he's propping up his own version of Islam, which tries to reconcile bits from Sufism and stuff from Wahhabism, which are complete polar opposites.
Right.
There is no reconciling them, and yet here he is trying to do it because it makes him the Islamic hero, the fighter to this.
Just completely unhinged by the sounds of it.
More or less, yeah. So stuff that happens in there are obviously there's the gay purges, which they do happen. There is a thing that does happen. There are like people who have fled there who have sold like the West. There's reports at large what's happening.
Very recently, in fact, there was
another
gay purge, right?
Yeah, it happens for it. It's sad. It's sad how like frequently happens. Like it really. I don't like the fact that I can just even now like, I can just say it happens. Like I don't like the fact that I can just say that. It's
horrible.
Not. So
what's the reaction like from the international community to these goings on? Is it the usual?
Well, I mean,
kind
of indifferent. It's like obviously there's stuff like RFA and Amnesty International and always like NGOs which are against it. But to be honest, I mean, Kadyrov is trying to basically make himself the face of Russia's like Islamic community, which goes far beyond the North Caucasus. Like it goes
what is the? Do you know what the? I suppose you probably don't have it to hand, but do you know what the percentage rates are of Islamic people in Russia?
I don't know the actual exact thing, like the actual
maybe
percentage.
I'll look it up quickly.
Yeah, I'll look it up. Russia religion.
It's interesting.
It's one of the
that's
big ones. Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
It's one of the larger ones, like minority religions. There's obviously Russian Orthodoxy. Islam's 10% in Russia, according to Pew Forum.
That's bigger than I thought it would be.
Not an insignificant portion of the population at all.
Yeah,
especially in that region as well. If he's somebody that would
71% though, so take it as you will. Russian Orthodoxy is still the big prominent religion there.
Yeah, of course.
So it's definitely a minority.
But as somebody that is obviously an autocrat and who would possibly want to imprint their power on the region more widely to lean on that would be, as if you're looking at it from a political point of view, I guess, a power play to lean into that and to lean into the different strains of Islam as well.
Well, it just happens. It's just a fact of what he tries to do. Kadyrov is obsessed with almost obsessed with getting himself viewed as this massive, like a guardian of tradition, this amazing like servant of the faith. And another weird thing another thing he tries to make himself is as Putin's #1 fan. He and Putin, like, whenever there's posts like stuff of meetings, they always pick up how good their friendship is. But it even goes weirder. You might remember, I'm not sure if he still has one, he definitely has a Twitter, but he used to be a very big followed, or one of the most followed for the time pages on Instagram. I think he had like 3.5 million followers on Instagram, where he posted such stuff like him posing with animals, him posing with celebrities, and then it would veer off into just propaganda of just like him saying, of him showing how tough his personal militia is, how tough he is. I think because he wants to emulate Putin, there were a few like martial arts and judo videos on there of him.
There are a lot of similarities, aren't there?
Oh yeah, it's a common thing.
This was
to do in the region. I mean,
this was going to be one of my main questions actually, because when reading your article about his sort of Kadyrov's like practices, I suppose, in Chechnya, and his way of silencing his critics or getting people to apologize by torturing them or whatnot. It sounds very reminiscent of Putin's tactics.
It's a big.
You suggest that he thought that Putin is losing control of him, but is it? Do you not?
Oh no.
To me, it seems more like he's taking a leaf out of his book.
Kind of. I would agree. I would agree that he's definitely taking a leaf out of his book. However, it's the fact that recently there's been a few more how the system works is Putin usually can, like, ministers. So the heads of the republics there can resign. So the big one recently was last year. The head of Ingushetia resigned over public protests, which is a first for the region. They're the biggest public protests, and for a while, like for a long time, and like almost unprecedented even. And he resigned over that. He's been able to change heads in Dagestan, so changed it from a previous system of more or less like ethnic federalism or power sharing to have Dagestan is now headed by an ethnic Russian. So there's a bit of changing there. But Kadyrov is so entrenched in his position that I don't think Putin could ever get rid of him as it stands.
Well,
right.
Because he's too powerful. He has a everyone in the government is from his tape, which is a clan more or less.
Yeah.
Which is a colloquial, or not everyone, but most people from both the actual traditional meaning of like this big kindred group and a more colloquial meaning of like people who he knows from his like who are from the same village or as him from the same town. It's that sort of thing.
Do you think
everyone? Also, yeah.
I was just gonna say, do you think Putin being the leader of the Russian Federation makes it difficult for the international community to get involved in what's going on in Chechnya?
Yes.
Do you think he's sort of preventing any?
So there, I would say there's definitely an element to that.
Right.
But to be honest, I think the main reason is that it's a big trend for authoritarian leaders in the former Soviet Union to act the way that both Putin and Kadyrov act. I mean, so as I was saying, that all the eccentricities, you have Lukashenko, who sometimes goes out to play hockey, and in the protests there's a famous video of him carrying around a gun and going on a helicopter over the protesters. In Turkmenistan you have Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, who is a nut job. Who there's a video of him dressed driving a jeep into the middle of the desert, dressed in full military attire, pulling out a gun and then shooting stuff and then ending it.
Right.
The more surreal
it's so
video,
bizarre.
The more surreal ones is there's I think a New Year's video, I think it was, where he's playing a piano or something and his son's playing a guitar and they sing a song and parts of it are in English and it's just very strange. There's a few of those. It's not the only single he and his son have made. There's a few of them out there.
Right.
It's just you just have this sort of many-faced leader. They call there's a book called Mr. Putin where it's like the 12 he has like personalities, and it's the same with Kadyrov. So Putin has like the austere, all-powerful statesman, the history man. Then you have the sportsman. Then you have like the very the traditionalist sort of thing. Kadyrov has those as well, and that is absolutely evident by the fact that he is just like that Instagram feed we can still find photos of, even though it's been deleted. You can still find photos of if you Google it. Just shows you how strange of like how strange the contrast is, because it's just appealing to every single aspect of society in the regions they rule. So I think that has more. I think that and the different power, the political power play, has more to do with this than, or with Kadyrov's longevity than Kadyrov and Putin's relationship. I mean, Kadyrov's already survived one transfer of power from presidency, so he was unscathed more or less when Medvedev was in power in 2008 to 2012.
Yeah.
And now that Putin's going to be in power till at least 2024, maybe even longer, I think his position is very much secure. I think he's probably more secure in his position than Putin is, like in a strange way.
Wow.
So
in a very strange way.
Finally, what can people do if they want to? What would you suggest if people want to learn more about this issue, but also if there's anything people can do to raise awareness? Are there any groups? So you mentioned it, Amnesty.
So RFE is always for getting the word out. If you want to do some research, as I said, Caucasian Not is definitely the best. Is the best news source. If you want to actually find out for yourself what's going on, it's probably the best English language news source. There are also organisations like Radio Free Europe, or Radio Liberty, is sometimes called, which has different things in the former East Soviet Union you can learn about, even from Chechnya to Georgia, Central Asia, and beyond.
Yeah.
I would recommend just literally just going on and having a deep dive into it.
Yeah, sure.
Or obviously if you can't, if that's not your thing, just go over like research different bits at a time, or read some books. If you want to learn about the Caucasus in general, there are some amazing books like The Caucasus: An Introduction by Thomas de Waal. But there are some amazing resources you can find easily online which tell you what's happening, why it's happening, and more or less how to get. At the moment, it is more or less just getting word out about it.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think at the moment, because as I said, he is very if he wanted to stop things in Chechnya, he's very entrenched. But as politics and foreign policy become, or domestic politics and foreign policy become more and more intertwined, obviously it's changing now.
Yeah.
People can actually have more of an influence on what happens in like politics as
absolutely
stuff like social media. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we move on to current events?
Sure.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
So one of the current events we're going to be talking about it's already been mentioned.
Yeah.
It's the current. I don't know if conflict is too strong of a term yet, but it seems very much like one.
It's not
the conflict between
Yeah,
Armenia and Azerbaijan, which has flared up again recently over. So I'm going to explain again what I read a BBC article, and that's about my extent of the knowledge again. So if you want to jump in afterwards, Alex, to explain any further. Basically, from what I understand, there's a region in Azerbaijan called Nagorno-Karabakh. I don't know if it's pronounced like that. Which has been controlled by a group of ethnic Armenians since 1994, and there have been tensions since then, because Azerbaijan and the international community recognise that region as part of Azerbaijan, but it's sort of fighting for its not even independence, I suppose, but like the people within that region don't believe they are part of Azerbaijan. Yeah. Recently over the last few days, there's been a flare up in fighting. Nearly 100 people have died, including civilians. I think Turkey is the only country that has actually picked a side and has stated that they'll back Azerbaijan. With every other nation calling for at the end of hostilities. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's about the extent of what I know. Alex.
To be honest, that's more or less correct. There are obviously a few things. So if you want a quick an understanding of what's going on, a quick way to understand it is names. So obviously, as it is, the usual term for it is Nagorno-Karabakh, which is a Russian term, or Russianized version of several other languages have the same sort of name. Like Karabakh is there permanently, and it means the meaning of it is disputed, but it means like mountainous black garden or something like that.
Right.
The conflict began really in 1988, like before the Soviet Union, before even the Eastern Bloc fully collapsed.
Right.
Even the conflict began there in the middle of Perestroika and Glasnost,
Right.
when ethnic Armenians tried to force the central power or the central government of the Soviet Union to transfer them from being a autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic in Azerbaijan to one in Armenia, and that didn't go over well. And it escalated from there into the Nagorno-Karabakh War, which lasted until 1994, when they declared an independent republic. And Azerbaijan was not in a good state for this war. And again, so they didn't really have a centralised army, because as it was all collapsing, different regional elites in the Soviet Union had more power over their resources they found in their states than others. The most famous one being or most prominent example of this is when in Ukraine they briefly ended up the country with the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, and then they just had to give it all back to Russia. Because, which, to be fair, I mean, if I was ruling a fledgling nation, I probably wouldn't want to worry about a giant nuclear arsenal either. So the one, and it's the Nagorno-Karabakh War, the one from 1984, was not a pleasant. No wars are pleasant. This was especially not pleasant, and no side really is innocent in this conflict.
See, that was going to be my question, because it's hard to know who exactly is in the right or the wrong, because I've seen people from both sides saying or blaming the other. So
that's a common thing.
Yeah.
So the one that is interesting. So there are a few more examples, but the more famous ones are before the war started. Just as the war was starting, there was a pogrom of Armenians in Baku. That was the first massive, the first large scale ethnic violence, where it became about ethnicity rather than rather than a almost dispute saying, this land wants to be part of our republic. You should constitutionally recognise this. That's when it went properly from nationalist politics to ethnic violence. Then there was the Kajali massacre, which took place in the borders of Nagorno-Karabakh, where I think the agreed upon number is at least 182. Some sources claim 300. Azerbaijan claims 600 people. Over 600 people died. All of them most of them ethnic Azeris.
Yeah.
And that's not the only times this happened. There are a lot of examples of this happening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As you said, though, it's governed itself more or less.
Why do you think? Yeah. Why do you think tensions have erupted recently again?
Well, this isn't the first time it's happened. Even this year, in July there was shelling exchange between both republics. In the last big one was in 2016 when there was the so-called 4-day war, which is very similar to what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a periodic the war never ended is what more or less is the agreed upon thing, and it at the moment as things stand, it was a status quo. It probably never will.
Right. Okay.
It's it's kind of depressing to read about.
Massively.
It's one of the so-called frozen conflicts.
Right.
So you have, again, 3 of them are in the Caucasus. There's Nagorno-Karabakh, then there's Ossetia and Abkhazia, where they are self-proclaimed republics, and they probably, unfortunately, never will rejoin Georgia. They probably will never be resolved. They'll just be there in limbo for a long time. Then you have Transnistria in Moldova, which you might only really know because it has the flag of the communists or the hammer and sickle. It's the last state which claims exist with the hammer and sickle on it, as flag, but it's ethnic Russian in Moldova. And then you have more recently the crisis in Ukraine, which has produced some more another republic of Novorossiya, which is again it's kind of just frozen at the moment.
Sorry, no. Is there anything being done to progress peace talks in these regions and in this conflict in particular? Because obviously Brett mentioned that.
So there was a demilitarization. So Armenia recently had a revolution where the current Prime Minister Pashinyan came to power afterwards, and Pashinyan was trying to start peace talks, and he actually demilitarized a bit of the border.
Right.
But then obviously stuff in July happened where there was the clashes, and now this has, I believe there was a soldier killed. I think it was an Armenian one. Armenia sent some shells back. Azerbaijan sent some shells back, and then they started doing airstrikes, and now it's just escalated into a full-scale conflict in the region. So yeah, that's more or less it. It isn't really. It hasn't just been on pause. It both has and hasn't just been on pause since 1994. There's been times where the conflict's heated up again, but then there's times where it's just, as I said, frozen. But in the meantime, talks do happen, but both sides are now so firmly entrenched in their position that it's unlikely to ever fully be resolved. It's unlikely to ever go all the way to reaching a peaceful settlement, reaching a handshake, and that's it. It's very unlikely that will happen. Unfortunately, it's just a sad. It's very
of course
depressing, but it's just
shame,
how it is. Yeah,
it's crazy that I really don't know much about that area of the world, so to hear about how messy it is and how how conflict-ridden it is it's definitely interesting. I'm definitely going to be looking into it further after this.
For sure.
Everyone should. I think it's a very understudied or especially in the public mindset, it's underappreciated and understudied and unknown region of the world.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, everyone should. I mean, if you want to increase your any appreciation of all the Caucasus, like culture and all that, go to a Georgian restaurant, have a khachapuri. That's always a good way to start. It's a delicious food. Georgian food is always amazing. But also just look up and...
have to bear that in mind.
Yeah. But also it's just worth looking at and just reading up and looking into the cultures, because it's a fascinating part of the world in both history, tradition, politics, and every other culture and everything that has been overlooked in recent years.
It does sound fascinating. I'm going to move on to the second current event topic, which is the release of Trump's tax information. So it's been long awaited for a while. He's withheld them, and apparently is the only president to ever have done so. He only paid $750 in 2016 and 2017 in income tax. He paid no income tax at all in 10 of the last 15 years. He owes $300 million in loans, and I've seen a lot of people come out about and speak about how this just is, it proves how endemic the corruption is in the American system, and it's crazy how people like people in regular jobs like nurses or firefighters or whatever who have just basically paid more income tax than the president has.
Yeah, right. I did not know about the 300 million loans. I knew about the rest, but Jesus.
So, to me, that was the only bit that made me prick my ears up. Because, so I wanted to ask you both, does this surprise you? Because I was not surprised
at all. Not really.
I wasn't surprised at all. And the bit that made me...
Why else would you withhold from releasing?
Of course. And we know the US system is completely rigged. Especially if you're a member of the elite, especially in the sort of member of the elite that Donald Trump is. None of them pay their taxes. They all find ways around it. It's obvious that this was going to be the case. But the thing that, for me, was the most interesting part was this, the amount of money in loans. Because that's the thing that really, I mean... How is he surviving?
Exactly. I have no idea. That basically suggests that he's not making any
exactly
money.
So and it also then leads on to the question of okay, but has this affected his policy in any way? Have these loans directly made him consider doing some decisions especially where the economy is considered? Has he has he done something at behest of these and does he owe favours, all that sort of stuff?
You have to think that it's at least a massive possibility, and the same with his businesses. We all know I think most of us know the example of Jimmy Carter having to sell his peanut farm, because people the premise that there could be some foreign influence or some foreign investment that could influence his policy decisions. The same with Trump. It's the fact that there's a possibility that all of these financial issues, the things that we all worry about on a day-to-day basis, could impact your policy as the American president, the most powerful man on earth. And you have to think that it has done in some way. It's not. I don't think it's conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory to think that it would. I think if anybody was in that position, God knows what I'd be like if I had that amount of money over my head on an everyday basis. It really is insane, but not in the slightest surprising. And what was his reaction? To wake up in the morning and just shout on Twitter in all caps, fake news. It's just we live in a twilight zone.
It's his go-to reaction. I mean, and if your support base believes it, then it totally takes what you say. When you say fake news, it's also unfortunately very effective. As soon as he says, "Oh, it's fake news," then it just bolsters his support base.
This is going to be my question. Do you guys think that this will affect Trump's chances of getting back in the White House at all?
So, the demographics of voters at the moment seem to be, there's each party have a core. You've got I will only ever vote for Trump, and I'm never going to want to vote for anybody else ever. And I will never vote for Trump, so I will vote for anybody who isn't Trump.
Yeah.
And then you have these undecideds, and in this election, seemingly, that undecided group seems to be people that are more in politically unaffiliated, and they're the people that will probably decide the election, and they're the people that will probably be swayed by this more than anybody else. I think it's the unfairness of it, the blatant unfairness of it, where there are examples in the past where you can go back. I think Obama was passing some tax legislation and Trump was ringing on him because he only paid a minor amount in income tax. And now Trump has done exactly the same thing. You know, this just clear hypocrisy. And they will be the ones that get swayed because of this. But as we know, populations have a short memory these days, and something else could pop up and it might not impact the vote at all. But I still think this election will be a lot closer than people think.
I think it's going to be closer. Yeah, I don't think it's going to. Like I said, I don't think it. Like you said, even I don't think it's going to be a landslide in either one of their favour.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, like, obviously, I don't like Trump, but Biden, like, out of all the candidates that the Democrats have or fielded in the primaries, the one that the main Democratic Party went with was Biden. Like,
it beggars belief, doesn't it? That they're the people that have been picked in this nation, the so-called greatest nation on earth. They're the two people that you select.
And even then, like, Biden, like even though he isn't the most even though like his charisma is based upon him being, you know, bros with Obama, like even then he's not charismatic. He's not as charismatic as some people or some politicians like are in the party, and yet somehow I reckon he probably does have a good shot of winning. Like, I think it's kind of like, you know, with Johnson in the Conservative leadership election, you know, just appear as little as possible.
Yeah.
And make sure when you appear, you make it good. And like, I think he probably has a chance of it. But it's the same with Trump.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. No, I was finished. That was my ending.
No, I wrote exactly this for the website a little while back. That he was essentially napping his way to an election victory, because you just hide, you show that you're not Donald Trump, because he doesn't have any good policy ideas really.
No.
You know, there's very, very little substance. I watched a video of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson endorsing them, and they sit there and talk. Why do I want Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be president and vice president? Because they will govern with soul and passion and humanity. Meaningless platitudes.
Yeah.
That means absolutely nothing. Like, people want to hear policy. How are you going to make their lives better? He's got nothing of interest to say, really. So you hide away. You let Trump lose the election, essentially, which is a risky strategy in and of itself. And you cross your fingers. I think that's their tactic, which is mad.
The last two candidates for the Democrats, obviously Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, have almost, in a sense, like, to me anyway, proved the old theory that, you know, there's really only one party in the US. Like, the fact that all they think they have to do to have any electoral success is just not be the others.
Yeah.
And it's it really does annoy me, to be honest, because
Hillary,
especially
Hillary Clinton's whole thing was that she was a woman, basically.
And
Biden's is that he's not Trump.
And Trump's thing, and again, Trump's thing was that he wasn't establishment, which, you know, he absolutely was.
And this proves that, right?
Yeah,
this proves that.
Yeah, this story.
I'm not sure what George W. Bush's one was, though. No, looking back on it, I'm not sure how W got there. I'm not sure.
yeah. Well, it's the whole shifts theory, isn't it? It's that you have 2 terms of somebody that's more on the right, and then 2 terms of somebody that's more on the left, and then it shifts again. And, the US population is overwhelmingly in favour of left-wing ideas. That's the most interesting thing to me. I watched a Michael Moore documentary, Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah, 9/11. Yeah.
Yeah, Fahrenheit 9/11 or 11/9, whichever way around it is.
Well,
But he explains in that documentary that the support amongst the US population is biggest for more left-wing ideas, taxing the rich more, legalizing marijuana, getting rid of university tuition fees, a public healthcare system. All these ideas are massively successful. Yet we have the news establishment, the media establishment, is overwhelmingly sort of centre right, and doesn't represent those values in any way, shape, or form. So you get this weird thing where centre and centre right politicians are consistently elected. It's such a bizarre system, and like you said, over here, Biden would be a conservative.
He absolutely would be. He'd be proper Tory, Tory establishment. Yeah.
And what I was going to ask actually was, sorry, what? Do you think that we were talking about the whole Joe Biden not being Trump tactic. Do you think there's a flavour of that to the Keir Starmer Labour Party at all?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that. Kind of, anyway. I think that's more of a strategy towards internal Labour politics, and also to outwards as well. I think I align more with some of the left politics of Labour, but I also align much more with stuff with towards the centre of the Labour Party as well. I'm not particularly, speaking personally, I'm not really particularly a big fan of anti-Semitism. So
sure.
Of course I'm not. Yeah, but with stuff like that, with the positions on there, I'm very much with Starmer's on that, and with Corbyn on other things, particularly to do with workers' rights and making this country a better one for people to live in.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably I'm in line with kind of both, and I think that's probably the best way for Labour to go. To be honest,
sure.
Corbyn had, as much as the meme goes, Corbyn did have very good ideas, and with the meme is of him winning the argument, he did have some very good ideas, but at the same time he also had some very not good ideas. So
for sure.
we've got to balance that out a bit. For Labour to win.
Yeah, I do agree that I think that the sort of Starmer is kind of doing the same thing, but I think we should probably do what we said last week and wait to see what kind of policies they do actually come up with.
Yeah, if and when, and that's been the major issue for me. That's why it kind of smells of that sitting on the fence, because I don't really know what they stand for. So
hopefully, if they get enough criticism for that, then they will actually take a stance.
Yeah,
it's interesting. This whole story on Trump's tax releases. I feel like we keep bringing up the one rule for some and another for the rest thing on this podcast. I feel like we should have a segment every week where we take a story that's that just symbolises that.
Well, we wouldn't be short for content.
We wouldn't exactly. It would be a great segment because there's something every few days.
Yeah, I think I got some linen somewhere. Hold on, I can do this properly.
Anyway, shall I move on to quick fire questions now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been preparing for this. I'm ready. Right.
So basically, the principle is answer the question as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
We haven't exactly succeeded in that in past podcasts, but we'll see how it goes. First question: is war ever justified?
No. That's it. No. Kind of. So, yeah, kind of. Maybe. It really depends. I mean,
this is the thing. I always want to say nuance on every one of these questions. Yeah.
Maybe I should have been more specific. Is offensive war ever justified?
No, that's the distinction I was going to make. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I would also say no to that.
Yeah.
No
to offensive war. Yes to some defensive wars.
Yes.
Stuff.
I agree.
Yeah. My second question is Russia a dictatorship?
Yes.
Unanimous decision there.
A very cleverly disguised dictatorship.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious.
It's obvious, but it gives them a good way to say, "Oh look, we can't be a dictatorship. We have elections."
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
People voted for the constitution that gives Putin several more terms.
Yeah.
People loved it.
It's not a dictatorship if we vote for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
No matter how much we threaten people's families or throw them out windows.
Yeah. I will amend my answer. I would say it's not a dictatorship. It is a competitive or elective authoritarian regime. Getting proper scholarly there. So let's just
you're taking me back to our political thought.
Yeah. Right. And on that, let's move on before this becomes an essay.
The next one is not a political question. It's
okay.
If you had to eat a specific type of cuisine for the rest of your life, which would it be?
Ooh, that's good.
So I'm talking cuisine from a country.
I can't
so Italian
poop.
or whatever. Chinese. I know.
Greek.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout.
Is that because they have a decent range of vegetarian food?
Yes, it is. Very fresh, nice foods. I get to eat all my favourite stuff. So good cheese, olives, nice salads, olive oil. It's all
Yeah.
I'm having
nice
trouble
bread.
choosing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm having trouble choosing between Spanish, Italian, and Georgian. But I think Spain is probably be my first choice. I like Spanish food.
Interesting.
Like tapas.
What would yours be?
Yeah.
Bro?
I think I'd probably have to go with French.
I was going to say, if you didn't say French.
Yeah, I know, right? I'd be betraying them. I grew up in France, Alex, so I'd be betraying my French roots if I didn't say that.
Back when I was a murderous meat eater, French would have been up there for me as well.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I really think that there's a Michelin star restaurant in France, in Paris, I think, that's now become only vegetarian. I can't remember who owns it, but I know the French could do an amazing job at making good vegetarian food.
Yeah.
They just need to. It needs to become more of a part of the
more
culture.
Of a thing,
I think.
There was a story today that a Michelin-starred restaurant in the UK used a fully plant-based dish for the first time on their menu.
Oh, right.
Which
nice.
Pretty cool.
Good.
Yeah.
They could do so much with it, and it opens so many doors to more creativity as well.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Anyway. Next question: dark milk or white chocolate? This kind of comes from our question from last week about just what's your favourite type of brand of chocolate.
Dark for me.
Yeah.
Milk for you, Alex.
Yeah, milk, specifically Milka.
I think.
Milk is amazing.
You gotta love it.
I'd have to go dark because I go off milk chocolate like every now and then.
Fair enough.
I like dark chocolate.
I can eat a bunch of it for a while.
Yeah, I can understand that, to be honest. Yeah, you gotta balance it out. You gotta have a balanced diet when it comes to this sort of stuff.
White chocolate though, that can fuck off.
Whoa!
Nah, I love chocolate.
No, I can't. It's way too sweet. It's not chocolate.
In moderation, white chocolate's nice.
Yeah. Are you telling me that if the Milky Bar kid turned up right now and offered you a Milky Bar, you'd turn it
punch
down?
him?
No, I wouldn't.
Is that what you're...
How dare you offer me this? No, I'm very strongly opinionated on white chocolate. My last question is: are sandals cool?
No, but I still wear them. I
think it depends on the sandal.
In hot weather, they're practical.
Yeah, they are
Depends
practical.
on the sandal.
It depends on the sandal. Yeah.
Actually.
I can get down with a sandal.
Yeah.
What kind of sandal is cool to you, Jack?
I like a Birkenstock.
Right.
You got to wear socks to them though. That makes them cool. Socks and sandals is always cool.
Yeah, some people, if you do the socks and sandals look with confidence, I think totally go for it. Yeah. Some people just rock it, don't they? With like the sort of chino pocketed shorts. That is a look that is beauty.
Here's what I'm thinking. Short blue shorts, long white socks.
Yeah.
White shirt, white collared shirt. That's the look for me.
It's a good look.
I can remember the last time I wore sandals, and it was probably well over 10 years ago.
Jesus.
Yeah, I used to wear them.
I will never wear them again.
That's
I hate sandals,
so you're a flip-flop
especially
man.
on my feet. Yeah, but even then, I'm not a huge fan of flip-flops.
No, what Brett does when he goes to the beach is he wears Converse
wear my
jeans.
shoes. Yeah. And socks. Make sure the socks are there.
Yeah, and the
because they've got to get as sandy
fair.
as possible.
Yeah.
Not even shorts. What?
No, I don't mind. I can wear shorts.
It's just jeans. Jeez.
We went to Devon, right? And I think we went to the beach basically every day, and you wore not jeans one day.
It was cold.
It wasn't cold. It was in the middle of
It's
summer.
the beach. You don't want to get like sand.
It was British summer. I'm not used to going to the beach in Britain.
It's still summer though, isn't it? There's a little bit of sun and over
A little
14
bit of sun.
degrees, and it's kit off.
Yeah, that's basically a British summer. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex, for joining us today.
Oh, you're very
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you
It's
so
been great,
much.
honestly. It's been
Very
brilliant. Thank you.
educational.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thanks.
yeah. It's
Very,
really
very
it's so
interesting.
interesting listening to you, and everybody go and read Alex's articles for us because they're fantastic.
Definitely. Was there anything you wanted to promote on the podcast, Alex? Any social medias where people can contact you, or if you'd rather I didn't, then that's better.
Honestly, if you wanted to contact, I haven't really got anything to promote at the moment. Because I'm in between like academic pursuits at the moment. I might actually start to promote in an article.
Academic pursuits, that should definitely.
If I get into, there are some things I might promote another article to write for it, but at the moment nothing. If you did just listen / watch this podcast and thought, gee willikers, that guy sounds like a guy I'd like to get some information from, you can follow my Twitter at AlexJYo with 2 O's at the end. I think.
Nice. Perfect.
Beautiful.
I think that's
I'm definitely gonna.
my name. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna go and call everything I've done since lockdown an epidemic pursuit. From now on, I'm gonna categorize my epidemic pursuits.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching. Make sure to contact us on social medias again at Demographic UK if you want to talk to us about anything or want to submit articles to us or even feature on the podcast. Feel free to. Also, our email at info@demographicauk.com. See you guys next week. Thank you very much for joining us again, Alex.
Yeah.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.